doing today?
Great.
I guess everybody's awake. Ready for this 2026?
Yes.
Yeah, we're only the first part of the year. I think it's been almost a year since I've been here, right? February last year. So a lot's happened in a year, and I'm really glad to be here. And one of the things I wanted to be talking about is I feel like this year is a new beginning. We were just talking about that. I feel like it's a new beginning for more than one person. But I want to ask you a question. Who's experienced like a cold over the past few weeks, like a flu or something physical or something going on with your health? Maybe pains in your body that you didn't know about before, or, things like that. I mean, all my clients are calling me. I say, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm just having this going on. I've got a flu or a cold. Where did this come from? Well, not a doctor. Let's just give that disclosure before we say anything. But what I will tell you is energetically, I talk about the metaphysics of how this works. And one of the books that I use a lot is this one, called The Metaphysical Anatomy by Yvette Rose. What she does is she takes it's Louise Hay on steroids is the best way to describe it. So it basically takes every medical diagnosis and breaks it down why energetically that's happening within you. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is capture how we look at things. So if you have something like a flu coming up, that's old congested thoughts coming up. They're surfacing up to the forefront and you're releasing them. Everybody with me on that one? So yes, I get it. You got an infection, a bacteria that came in. But if we subscribe to the idea that things attract into our life as a result of where we're at. So one of the things that I love to say, because I didn't really care for the movie The Secret that much, and there's a reason for that, because we don't attract with positive thoughts, we attract who we are inside. Now, before I get further along down in this conversation, it's subconscious. So nobody's doing anything wrong before we get into the blame and shame game. Because now, since that movie's come out, there's been what I call toxic positivity that's come out. Everybody with me on that one? Everybody know what I'm talking about? Where there's it reminds me of my grandmother when she used to say, God's going to get you. and she'd always say that to me, and I just laughed. I was like, well, he's really mean. But what I'm talking about is people will say, well, that's because you're not doing this with your life. And I'm like, man, am I back at my old church when I was growing up? Because I think that metaphysics and spiritualism and New Thought Christianity is about what? Healing all of those old energies of judging. Am I correct? Everybody with me on that one? And so what I wanted to start doing is, one of the reasons why I wrote this book this year is I started showing things in my life that just kept on consistently happening over and over and over. Things that were very positive, where I would get really focused and things would just start happening. Everybody with me? Everybody ever had that happen in your life? And you're just like, what's the difference between this time and other times? Okay? And so I was just on a podcast yesterday, and me and the podcast host, we were talking about, I believe it was Dolores Candy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that said there's going to be a time where the people that have done their inner work it's almost like they're going to be in a different world from everybody else. And they said, I think she started talking about that being around 2028. Well, what I'm thinking about right now is that this year is the new beginning, so it's really starting a new cycle energetically of you releasing old patterns that you've been still holding on to. I'm going to tell you physically what happened to me. I am a type 2 diabetic, and so one of the things that I've had happen over the last month is my medication started causing liver fatigue. No damage to the liver before we go there. But old Chinese medicine says what? Liver is where you store your anger. Okay? So now I've done a lot of work over the last 20 years. Does that mean I've cut out energetically all the anger from the eons and eons of past lives and energies of where I was codependent in this lifetime? Also the pancreas, if you think about it, the type 2 diabetes is right here in this area. And then for the longest time, over the last 2 years, I don't have this anymore. I had a lot of acid reflux. So you got acid thoughts in the stomach. I'm giving this as an example for you all because what chakra is that at? The solar plexus, right? Which is about boundaries. And you said earlier, it's your power. And so I didn't feel very empowered in my lifetime because I always felt like I wasn't very smart. I always felt like I wasn't very and then I didn't value myself. Can anybody relate to this? Okay? So hence the reason why I wrote a book called The Sovereign Mindset. So interesting enough, what we teach a lot of times is what we're going through the lessons on. One of my favorite things I've ran across is I had 11 years of a podcast. And almost every person I interviewed, their book was about something that they had gone through. You ever notice that? Like Louise Hay in her book, Catherine Ponder, a lot of her books, Myrtle Fillmore and Charles Fillmore, their books came from Myrtle was sick, remember? And then they started the whole unity movement. Even in the spiritualist movement, you found somebody that has gone through something and then they wrote a book about it because they wanted to teach how they got through it. So this leads me to this idea that everything happens exactly what we've heard before. We all think it's cliche, but everything happens for what? A reason. So I've been looking back, and one of the things I want to challenge you guys to today is I want you to start looking back at your life. And the world always says, well, don't focus on the past. And they're absolutely right. You don't want to stay there. You want to live in the now of the moment. However, what I'm saying is you look back, and I want you to just take a moment, just pause just for a moment. I want you to look at all the things you've ever gone through. All the heartaches and the sorrows and the happiness and the joy and all the successes and the failures and the things that really just were hard to get through, the physical things. And I want you to look back and I want you to honor yourself just for a second and say, wow, I got this far. Can anybody relate to that one? I got this far. I got this far because of the times that I've gotten my heart broken. Can anybody relate to that one? Gotten my heart broken? Where I was completely broke and there was a negative in my bank account. Can some people relate to that one? Wasn't sure how I was going to feed, and ramen noodles, I got real creative with ramen noodles. Everybody with me on that one? And how did you get through this? Because there was a force, whatever you want to call it, that was always working in your favor. There was a plan for you, always working in your favor. And it made you who you are today. Who you are today is fantastic. But I'll work with people and do coaching and energy work with them and say, no, I just really failed a lot, and I just had all these things. I'm like, but you've also had a lot of successes. Well, what success? The only success I've had is I had children. Hi, that's a pretty big success. I haven't done that one, except my little fur babies that I have. And so my best friend, he's been going through an awakening. And one of the things he in 2017, he collapsed in his house, and he had the fluids were not draining on his frontal lobe of his brain. And so they had to drill into his head 4 times and put what is called a shunt in his body that drains the fluid. Well, he had an out-of-body experience and a near-death experience, and so he came out, and I loved him even before this, but he was a pain in the before this. He had a personality change from this. And why did he have a personality change? Because he came out and he said, when you face your mortality, you start to wonder why you're so nasty to the people you love. Can anybody relate to this? Where something just changes and you just look at it and you go, why have I been doing it this way? Why? Why have I allowed the same people to disrespect me, to not value who I am? And one of the things that I realize is when I think about manifesting and creating the world around me, I start to think, what? I start to think, well, if I start to value myself, energetically, my electromagnetic field is going to get bigger. I'm going to appear to be more empowered because I will be. And guess what? Situations are going to attract into my life that are going to change the circumstances in my life. And then, yes, if I pray and say, it'd be kind of fun if I did that. And then it just kind of comes in. Can anybody have that happen before? Where you're just like, you pray and you're just in alignment. As Abraham Hicks said, that's when you're at that vibrational match of whatever it is you're praying for. Well, that's natural law. Natural law, things happen exactly in the time that they're supposed to happen. So if there's a plan that you set forth with your counsel or whatever you want to call it before you came into this life, and you come in and say, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to be born to 2 teenage parents, and one's going to be 15, one's going to be 16, the 15-year-old dad's going to move to Arizona, and I won't get to see him for the first 11 years of my life. So I'm going to have this sense of abandonment in my life. Can anybody relate to these kind of things and how you were raised? Now maybe you had both parents, but maybe mom said to you when you were 10 years old, why are you being such a little jerk today? And you internalize that. Because what this book talks about is that you have to think about it in this way. I'm almost a 52-year-old man now, but maybe that 10-year-old part of myself is still running subconsciously in my energy. In Reiki, it talks about the energy goes where it needs to go. Am I correct? When you lay your hands on somebody? Well, and then Ki stands for what? Life force energy. So that life force energy is always in your body. It never moves. And this energy they talk about in science never goes anywhere. It just transmutes its state. So if we're just transmuting our state, I can transmute that energy, that subconscious energy, in my body to change it and flip the script, so to speak. But we're always in it, a lot of us in the healing world, we're trying to focus just on the emotions. I want to focus in on the frequency. And so, if I was to say to you that you already were wealthy and abundant, I want you to just feel that for a second. Because that all is based on your idea or your definition of wealthy and abundant. Am I correct? So just say that just for, everybody close their eyes just for a second. And I want you to feel a deep breath in. Let it all out. One more, I just want to kind of get you relaxed. Deep breath in. Let it all out. You are wealthy and abundant. And I want you to say inside, I am wealthy and abundant. I want you to feel it. Does it feel heavy? Or does it feel freeing when you say that? You are healthy, happy, and wise. Feel it. And if you feel a heaviness, it's okay. It's okay, that's just an energy. If you feel a freeing or a lightness, that's an energy as well. I feel blessed, and I am blessed. Spirit walks and talks with me at all times, and I'm in communion with Spirit, at one with Spirit. All right, deep breath in. Let it all out. You can open your eyes. Who felt heaviness in some of those, just even if it was slight? Okay. Who felt lightness in some of them? Okay. Now, in this energy, there is no right or wrong. There is just experience. All right. So the next words I want to say, I don't want your mind to go into, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And if it does, then that's an opportunity. Okay. So what I'm saying is that heaviness is where the chi is not flowing correctly. It's like if I was to take in a creek or a river and drop a large rock in the middle of it. What's the stream going to do? It's going to go around it. Am I correct? All right. So what we do is energetically, when you get into there, you feel that even slight little heaviness. I call it fabrics of thought. So you can sit in there and you can start talking to that little fabric of thought. One of the things I teach my clients now is to start talking to their organs every morning. Thank you so much, heart, for pumping the blood through my body. Thank you so much, lungs, for pumping the air through my body so I can breathe. And so, but you can also go down and you can ask that little fabric or that heaviness, what's going on here? So this energy that I've been telling you about with the medication reacting with the liver, I went down and I said, what is it I'm not seeing? And so for the next 4 days after I asked that question, I had dreams of times in my life where I felt betrayed and disappointed. And so what ended up happening is I had to go in there and do that nice little Hawaiian prayer. Everybody know what I'm talking about, the Ho'oponopono prayer? And I spent the next 3 days facing that imagery until finally I felt something lift off my body. And what had happened, that means I transmuted the energy. The energy didn't go anywhere. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, because there is what I call avoidance techniques that we all do. And that's what we're thinking, everything is great and I'm all love and light. And I'm like, well, light is about facing the truth in yourself. Love is the frequency, the divine frequency that holds the energy together. But if we judge something and say, well, I shouldn't have drank that one time in college and drank so hard that I passed out. Everybody relate to that? Where we were young and we did a lot of crazy things. You had to go through those crazy things to become who you are today. I have a really good friend that is 6 years sober. And he was into a lot of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that until one day he stopped. And now he is a rehab counselor helping other young men and women overcome their drug addictions. So do you think that maybe, I mean, he didn't have to, but do you think that maybe his divine plan was to go through all that so that when he was speaking to these other young men and women, he could relate to what they're going through? And maybe he's saving some of these young women, our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, from dying from drugs. So do you think that might have been his divine plan? And that's where we have to start getting. It doesn't mean as parents and loved ones and people, we don't speak up and say, hey, I really think what you're doing is not really helpful. I just told a client recently, I said, their partner of 27 years punched them on Christmas Eve. And I said, that is never okay. Well, he's only done it twice. Twice in 20 years. One time was too many times. And I'm a very hard coach sometimes, and I got right up in their face and I said, do you not value yourself? Well, I love it. No, you don't. No, you don't, because you don't even love yourself. And they got mad at me. But you know what? They're now living with their parents right now because they knew what I was saying was true. But here's the reality. We get in these things and we think that things are going to change. Who's been in the same type of relationship over and over and over again? Who's been in the same type of job over and over again throughout your life and you're like, why do I keep on into the same situation? Let's not judge it. Let's start saying, hey, I deserve something different. I deserve the best of everything. I want it divinely given. When we end our stinking thinking, we stop manifesting the craziness in the world. And this is why when my grandmother also used to say to me, put it in God's hands, put it in God's hands, put it in God's hands, put it in God's hands. And I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to do that. I thought I knew more than her until I went through it over and over and over again. And then I started saying, you know what? Maybe I'll try this put it in God's hands thing. And then miraculously, things started happening. And so, can anybody relate to that one? And so this is the one thing I've learned. If I can't hear it, if I can't figure it out here, then I immediately say, I surrender. And a lot of times I say I surrender way before then because I'm like, you know what? Usually I try to figure it out and I'm not really doing a good job of it. Well, then I realize that my higher self is me, right? And that divine energy, we're all a part of. But we've been taught that we're separate. And that's incorrect. We are not separate from the divine. They talk about it in every church. They say the temple of God is where? But when you say it to people, I said to one woman, she was raised Catholic recently, and I said, well, where's the temple of God? She goes, well, it's in me. She goes, but I'm a sinner. And I'm like, do you know that sinner just means missing the mark? So sinner means that you're missing the mark from yourself, from your own temple, to allow the flow of the divine spirit to flow through you and work through you. And I said, when you put it in God's hands, you're putting it in the hands of what you're a part of. And she goes, really? I was like, yeah. And I said, trust me, I don't get this all the time either because I screw up just as much as everybody else. But when you see it and you witness it over and over and over again, you start to believe even more. And the interesting part about this, and I'll kind of wrap up here in a second, is my background is in education. So what I find fascinating about how we were created is your body was literally created on purpose to make mistakes. Why? It's a learning theory called constructivism. Anybody teachers in here? Or were former school teachers? So you know what I'm talking about. So, and then there was an old learning theory that I don't necessarily agree with by a gentleman named Skinner, who came up with a theory of behaviorism. I think that is counterproductive to how we learn and how God created us. And here's the reason why. Because as you mess up, as you make mistakes, as you gain wisdom, as you start to experience things, constructivism means that you're constructing your own form of learning throughout your lifetime. So if I'm teaching you something, a new idea, or explaining something, chances are, especially in spirituality, you've already heard it. But I may say it in a way that makes it go click, and then what ends up happening? a neurotransmitter has already been fired from one side of the brain, and then it connects that new frequency to the other side of the brain. Once it connects to the right side of the brain, it now becomes habit. So, interestingly enough, when we look at natural law, and everything is in divine timing and divine order, everybody heard that one before? Well, everything happens in divine timing and divine order is because when you finally get it, it's because you had to go through all the experiences of building the blocks of learning the spiritual energy until finally it clicks. Divine timing and divine order says you'll achieve it when the time is right. There's no race to enlightenment. You'll get it when you get it. Nobody is at a higher or lower. Yes, frequency-wise, you may be at a higher frequency in some areas. You know, in some areas you're not. Some areas I may have a higher knowledge than you, but then I'm going to learn something else from you. And that's where we start getting into, because we start limiting ourselves by separating ourselves by thinking I am better, or less than, or higher, or sideways. We're all divine beings and divine children of God. That's it. We're all down here having a human experience. That's it. And it's that simple. But we've made it difficult. And we don't have to make it difficult because spirituality is actually very easy. It's actually very simple. We come out here, we experience, we learn. Trust me, I'm 50 years old. There's some people that are in their 70s and they know more than I do. As far as life wisdom, absolutely they know more than I do. I have a friend that's 93 years old, and she came to my class, in my psychic development class, and she was learning from me as far as different ideas, but then I was learning from her because she has another 40 some odd years of life experience on me. So she was helping me through other things. She goes, did you ever think about it that way? Because I went through that when I was in my 40s. And I was like, no, I never thought about it that way. No, that's how we do this, because the universe also says everything I put out there comes back. It's a flow. There's an ebb and flow to the universe. So whatever, I may be the teacher one moment, and then the other person's the student, and vice versa. It keeps on flipping and flopping, and that energy flows. So what you want to do is when you get into your meditations, you want to start feeling that ebb and flow of the universe. Now here's the other last thing I'll throw at you. So as a result of everything I've been going through, I have this little device attached to my body that tells me where my blood sugar is at. So I just thought I would play with it. Whoever does that when energy, you were talking about sending light down it. So if you're healers, and everybody in this room is a healer, and it says, ask and you shall receive in the Bible, and it also says to pray boldly in the Bible, am I correct? So one of the things I've been doing is my blood sugar shoots up because every time I eat, because I haven't been on my medication, guess what my sugar does? It goes that little man running up the mountain thing gets higher and da, 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 da. And I'm like, and I've just dropped down in meditation. I said, balance it out. And you'll see there's a little arrow that points straight up when it's skyrocketing, and then there's one that drops this way where it's kind of skyrocketing but going down. And then when it comes to this, it's evened out. And so one day I said, drop the blood sugar, because I wasn't thinking, and it went straight down. And within about 20 minutes, I was from over 200 at 60, and the alarm started going off. I said, you got to eat something, otherwise you're going to... And I was like, oh, well, maybe I should be careful what I say. And then I said, balance out the energy and go down gradually so that I don't get a headache. Because if it drops too fast, then I get a headache. And so these are the kind of things that I want to share with you. You can talk to your blood pressure. Who has high blood pressure here? It's okay to admit it. It's not a big deal. I mean, I have high blood pressure sometimes. Blood pressure means you're putting the pressure on your life. Blood is your life source. So what you do is you start breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, and you say, I am blessed and I'm healthy, and whatever it is that I'm putting pressure on my life, I release it in divine timing and divine order. And what will end up happening is the energy, you'll actually start seeing the blood pressure go on. Take your blood pressure, I'm sure you have a little cup at home, take it and then do it again, meditate, take it again, and I can guarantee you'll see it start going down. What that tells me is this is your temple, and you have dominion over it. It's your own little universe right here. You're not a victim, you're a divine being. And I'll leave you with that.